We're going to look at 6 lessons we can learn from the people who went through the Great Depression, principles that can help us in our modern homesteads or even if we live in the city. Hey everybody, Chad Cruiser here with Health and Homestead. And by the way, if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. It really helps us out as we continue to produce new films. Now, I want to begin by sharing with you a story that kind of lays the foundation for this Great Depression. Now, a number of years ago, I watched a documentary film that showed the contradistinction between those who lived in the city and those who lived in the country during the Great Depression. And they were interviewing different people who had been in both circumstances. In one group, as they were in the city, they interviewed a man and he talked about watching, he was just a boy at the time, and how he watched his neighbors be evicted, how they were kicked out of their house. There they were outside, the snow began to fall upon them and their furniture, having no idea where to go, and how he as a child felt so utterly helpless and there was nothing that he could do to help them. And also how people during the Great Depression would have to wait in bread lines. And back then, how would they wait in bread lines? Perfectly calm, perfectly patient, waiting their turn, wearing suits. If we went through it again today, do you think it would be like that? No. But contrast this with the people in the country. That this man was interviewed, and he summed it up perfectly. He said, listen, before the Great Depression, it was very difficult. During the Great Depression, it was very difficult. And after the Great Depression, it was very difficult. But he said, but we always had plenty of food because they raised their own provisions. They grew their own food. And that's the first point that we're looking at. The first of our 6 points is number 1, learn to raise your own provisions. Now, I know this seems old school. It seems like from a bygone era, but people are getting back into it. And they're finding that not only is it this financially beneficial, but also that it's super fulfilling at the same time. So number 1, our first point is learn to raise your own provisions. Number 2 is always have an emergency fund. Now, if you don't have an emergency fund right now, slowly begin to make your way up to having one. You probably heard of Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey, the most popular financial guy in the world, probably. He suggests having a minimum to begin with of $1,000 emergency fund, and then over time, after you get rid of your debts, try to get up to 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up. That's not necessarily 3 to 6 months of how much you make, but 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up. So just in case there is another crash, I mean, we just went through it. Basically, my income for a time just stopped. And it's a blessing to be able to have that because then you can make it for a time. It's very helpful to have that. Number 3, learning to be a DIYer, a do-it-yourselfer, meaning one of the greatest things of noble self-sufficiency is learning to do things on your own, things that you think, man, I can't do it. I mean, we live in a time right now where you can be apprenticed to anything on YouTube, right? I mean, literally, you can watch some guy do anything, some lady do anything, and you can learn from them. So learning to maybe fix something around the house, maybe change your garbage disposal when it breaks down rather than calling in a plumber, or, you know, dealing with the toilet when it has some simple little problem. Now, we get it. There are certain things that you'll probably have to call people up for, but in general, learning to do this is something that during the Great Depression, people had as much as possible to take care of themselves. Number 4, do not buy things that you don't have cash for. Listen, if you don't have cash for something, just don't buy it. I mean, the one thing probably that you may not buy with cash is your house. But learn to save up for a car. Learn to save up for the next phone. You think that's crazy. Why would I pay cash for a phone when I can pay, you know, $30 a month? Or I don't even know how much it costs, but because we just pay cash. And you think, oh, you got to have a lot of money to do that. No, you just don't buy as many things and you wait until you actually have the money to do it. The billionaires love it. They love it when you go on the layaway program. You pay a few dollars a month and then they get to wrap the rest in their pocket, right? And so listen, you'll be better off not paying somebody else extra money for the stuff you have. That's where a lot of corporations make most of their money, is when you are in debt. And so learn to be like someone from the Great Depression that didn't buy anything unless they had the cash. Now, my great-grandmother actually, she lost a house during the Great Depression and she decided never to do that again. She actually waited to buy her next house until she had cash. Now, it'd be great if we could all do that, but obviously most of us don't do that today. But if you can, hey, knock yourself out. That's awesome. Let's go on to number 5. Take whatever job you can get and do your best. Lean into that job. Do whatever you can to be a prize employee. And if you are that kind of person, you will be hired. If you are one of those individuals, and maybe you weren't in the past. Maybe in the past you hated working and you were just there to check in, check out, and have them hand you a check. But if they see you that way, I mean, how are people going to make it to higher levels when they see you don't care about the company? So learn to be a hard worker. Learn to be industrious. Learn to be diligent and take the job and do the best that you can there. And if you're faithful with the job that you're at, you may be, you may go up to a higher level after that time. Number 6, our final point. Now, I think this is actually one of the greatest lessons from those who lived through the Great Depression. Number 1 is that when they actually did get through it, those who all lived through it, and most people did live through it, they may have gone through some very difficult times. One of the things you see that even when they were very self-reliant, they learned to work hard, many of them learned to be quite successful and make money in life, and many of them even became very successful, maybe even millionaires. But one of the things about them you often see is that, or I should say did see, is that they what? They didn't act like they had a lot of money. They still lived frugally even when they were more successful. We live in kind of like the bling, the season of bling, the time in Earth's history where if you make more money, man, you get a bigger house. And if you make more money, you get a bigger house and you get a more fancy car. Well, I remember being young and the guy who owned the diamond store in town, he drove like an old Ford. And he lived in the same neighborhood as us folks who lived a simple lifestyle. And so learning from these people that even when you have more, you don't have to act like you have more. You can live a simple life. You can be more giving, help people out in the community, and it's not like stuff makes you happy anyway. It's really the simple things of life, nature, spending time with family, and even your relationship with God that actually give you peace, joy, and happiness in life. So learn from these 6 tips. And once again, if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button. God bless and have a great day.